So, before you actually get a proper understanding of computer vision's capacity or capabilities, no, I don't like how that sounds. So, in order for us to understand the limitations of computer vision, it's important to understand what makes it so hard. Because anything with AI or deep learning is essentially, even though it seems easy to us, it's not easy for an algorithm or computer or model. So let's take a look at this. So firstly, like I just said, our brains make things easy for us. Our brains are amazing at vision and so many other tasks like speech, reading, comprehension, strategic thinking, well, some people at least. But generally, everyone can do vision quite well. And that's because we have a very well-developed visual cortex at the front of our brain here that basically can see and understand what the visual information that's being fed to our eyes very, very well. It's amazing actually at what it can do. It beats robots any day, at least currently right now. And there's a reason for that actually. And that's because our eyes are very good at general purpose computer vision. That is, let's assume you're watching this slide right now. You're understanding that you're watching a screen or a laptop screen or a monitor. You understand that there's like a background behind it. You understand that there's the depth. There's so many different things you're understanding. You know where it's well lit. You know what the desk is. You know what the objects are on your desk, the keyboards, everything. So there's a lot of information being fed into your eyes and you just naturally understand it. However, it isn't so for computers. They have to basically understand every object. And then we actually have background knowledge, like what an object is, like what a cup is. A cup stores water or other drinks. But robots don't have that, so you have to kind of build all of that general knowledge into it, which is a different topic though. I mean, it's eventually what computer vision will lead to, however, because robotics are a huge area where computer vision can be applied. But as of now, it's more in niche applications like understanding one type of medical data or understanding faces very well or understanding how to transform your image into artistic styles. Basically, we've trained these models to do niche things, but unlike our brains are very general. Computer vision isn't there yet. So it might excel, it might even beat humans in one task, but it sucks at everything else. And now let's take a look at what it actually makes computer vision so hard. Now there are a number of things. So first one is you're limited by the cameras. Our eyes are very good camera systems if you think about it. However, physical cameras often have limitations with noise, with granularity, with resolution. Things far away, if it's a 1080p camera, are going to be quite blurry compared to someone with 20/20 vision. So there's those limitations. Then viewpoint variations. We naturally understand that this is the Statue of Liberty at different angles, or this is a house that's just rotated. But a computer vision model might not. You might think it's different objects it's looking at. There's also changing lighting conditions. You can see how drastic this light being here or this light being not there changes the scene. Then there's scaling issues. So you can see the Taj Mahal at this level, at this scale, looks completely different. At least to a computer vision model it might, hopefully not. But you can see when you scale back out how different it looks, as well as these comparisons here. Then there's natural, non-rigid deformations, like a dog or a horse has many different poses. Similar to a human, you can be sitting, standing, crouched. So there's that to consider, that deformation that an object like this can do. So you're going to have to use other characteristics to identify it, which we naturally learn in our brains, but a computer vision algorithm has to be fed many different instances of a dog or a horse to understand that it's not the fact that the animal is standing this way that makes it a dog. It's because of its fur or its facial shape or ears. That's what makes it a dog. There's also occlusion, which means that part of the object is blocked by another object. So it's a form of clutter, which we'll take a look at next. So this isn't technically a form of clutter, it's more of camouflage, but in a way it is clutter because it's a scene where it's hard to detect the octopus in. Next, this is a scene somewhere in China, possibly, that just shows you how many different objects are around. So it's quite hard to make out anything in this picture. Far less for a computer vision algorithm trying to make sense of it. Then there's object class variation. Look how many different types of beds there are in this scene. We all know they're beds, except this is like a sofa bed, but we all know they're beds, but a computer vision model might not. Then there's ambiguous images and optical illusion, sorry. So you can see this is actually a flat 2D image, however it does look like a 3D image. Is this a face or two faces? Who knows? So as you can see, there's a number of ways we can trick vision systems, and actually there's a whole field of computer vision, antagonistic type of training, where you create models to beat other models effectively. So it's not foolproof. It's very well developed right now, but as you can see, naturally vision is basically a messy field. I mean like messy images coming in. So there's a lot of ambiguity inside of it. So in the next section, we'll take a look at what exactly are images, because this is the foundational knowledge of computer vision, understanding what images actually are. So I'll see you in the next lesson where we take a look at this topic.